to the Kent Lapp Podcast.
There's always factors, right?
Yep.
You know, whether it boils down to lighting or framing or frame rate, whatever it may look like, you know, like you'll catch those things over time. And you're right. I think that the stark difference between studio revision, you know, before this and then like this studio now, like, yeah, it's going to upset some people. You know, people love to be familiar with what they know. But at the end of the day, you know, like Joe decided, hey, this is what I want. This is what looks cool. Like, this is what I'm feeling right now, you know? And if Joe says, hey, Matt, like, let's do something different, you know, like that's the beauty of it, right? Like create your personality or not create your studio around your personality and what you're feeling at the time, you know? And that goes for any podcaster, you know? And, you know, fortunately for Joe, he's number one, right? So like, haters, right? Like we know the old adage about haters, right?
Yeah,
it's
that's
just like
it's totally true. I mean, I will say this: it's starting to grow on me. But when he moved in there, I didn't. There was a lot there I didn't understand. Like, first of all, the guy's got money, right? So he wants to do a studio in this room. That's great, but you could do a studio anywhere you want and build it as big as you want and build an entire new building around it if you want. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I was just surprised to see him go what looked to be a space that small, because what I loved about his other space was he had room to get up and show someone how to do a sidekick or like to do stuff like that. And he just doesn't, it didn't look like he had that kind of space here. And I'll say this, the Adam Curry coming on the Joe Rogan Experience in the first episode, I believe in the new studio, it was not Joe's best day. I mean, I'll just say that. I don't know if you listened to it or not, but it was, the negative feedback was not entirely from the studio. I think he was a little drunk coming into it, and he was cutting Adam Curry off a ton, and it was just not. I'm a big Joe Rogan fan. I listen to a ton of his stuff, but one of the comments was look, we all have bad days at work, right? And so that made sense. It's like, yeah, Joe has some bad days too, and maybe some would say that was not a bad day, and he was doing perfectly fine. I just kind of felt like that was not his best podcast by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that kind of compounded things with the studio too.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, again, I don't watch a lot of podcasts. I did hear some of the comments and stuff like that. And, you know, for me, like, let's think about it this way, right? Like you move from LA to Austin. Let's say you brought your podcast here from Nashville and you hire a guy like me to like build a studio, right? Like the shock value and the first, like the initial like reactions, like, dude, this is sick.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Even when we finished the studio in person, it's a lot, you know, like you see it in the video sometimes and it feels underwhelming. And like I've seen the negative comments, you know what I mean? It is what it is. But when you're in the room and you're like, damn, we hit that deadline. We did the best with the time that we had and the parameters that we were given. And you sit in that room and it's like, dude, it's time to celebrate.
Exactly.
Regardless of whether or not it's perfect.
Yep.
You know, and so, you know, maybe that's what it was, you know, like, hey, like if you went to your new studio, like, wouldn't you want to just like feel like, hey man, like we've made this accomplishment, you know, and it's pretty sick. And so, you know, I've seen the comments, I haven't seen the episode and, you know, I can't speak on that, but I would say that if it were my studio and I built something really sick that was way different, I'd be like, yeah, dude, let's have a couple drinks. Let's, you know.
Yes. That makes total sense. And I think that kind of puts it in a proper category for me too, because I think the frustration for me was Adam Curry was like, he would get into talking about like some of the things that the feds are doing with currency, and like Joe would cut him off, off. And so maybe Joe was just trying to have a good time in his new studio. He just moved to Austin. Here's Adam Curry, like the godfather of podcasting, and they just want to have a good time together and not talk about federal currency and those types of things, you know? So that makes total sense. Yeah, it really does.